6 months had passed since the evacuation, and the strange new family arrangement was becoming normal. Captain Day-Ho had moved Kira and Zeth into his own quarters, which he had modified to be more suitable for growing Kithari cubs. Dr. Park Jin-woo visited every day to check on their health and provide guidance about alien child psychology. The process was not easy because neither species fully understood what the other needed. Kira had sharp claws and teeth that could accidentally hurt humans. When she played too roughly, Zeth was much stronger than human children his age, which caused problems during playtime. The human families had to learn new ways of child-proofing their homes. Teacher Jung Mi-kyung worked with both species to create educational programs that would help everyone adapt. She discovered that Kithari cubs learned much faster than human children, but they also needed more physical activity and sensory stimulation. Her classroom became a mix of human emotional learning and Kithari warrior training. The cubs are doing amazingly well. She reported to the Colony Council Kira has learned to read in both Korean and Kithari, and she can solve math problems that challenge human teenagers. Zeth has memorized over 50 human songs, and he is starting to compose his own music, but the emotional development was the most remarkable change. Kira, who had been aggressive and frightened, was learning to trust her human family. She started calling Day-Ho Alpha Dad, which made him laugh and cry at the same time. She appointed herself protector of all the human children in the colony, using her natural Kithari strength to defend them from playground bullies. Zeth became the unofficial ambassador between humans and Kithari. He had a gift for understanding what people were feeling, and he could explain cultural differences in ways that helped prevent arguments. His gentle nature and wise words made adults from both species come to him for advice. The integration was not without problems. Some human children were afraid of the alien cubs because they looked different and had claws and fangs. Some Kithari adults thought the cubs were becoming too soft and losing their warrior instincts. There were fights and misunderstandings and hurt feelings on both sides. Dr. Park spent countless hours studying both species and learning how to help mixed families succeed. He discovered that Kithari cubs needed much more physical contact than human children. They required grooming and touching and constant reassurance that they were loved and safe. Human parents had to learn new parenting techniques. He explained to a group of volunteers, "You cannot just tell a Kithari cub that you love them. You have to show it through physical affection and consistent presence. They need to smell your scent and hear your heartbeat to feel secure." Engineer Kim So-min and her wife adopted 3 Kithari cubs whose parents had died in the battle. They turned their entire house into a playground with climbing structures and hiding places that satisfied the cubs' need for physical activity. The cubs called them Mama Kim and Papa Kim and treated their home like the best playground in the galaxy. Lieutenant Choi Min-ho took in an older Kithari teenager who had been injured in the fighting. The boy was angry and bitter about losing his family, but Choi's patient kindness slowly helped him heal. They spent hours working on starships together, and the boy learned that humans could be strong in their own way. The real test of their new society came during the Festival of Remembrance, a Kithari holiday honoring those who had died in battle. The refugees wanted to hold a traditional ceremony, but they did not have the proper ritual objects or ceremonial grounds. Mayor Song Hye-jin offered to help the colony create a memorial garden where both species could honor their dead. The humans provided the labor and materials, while the Kithari designed the layout. According to their ancient traditions, working together, they built something beautiful that belonged to everyone. Kira and Zeth played special roles in the ceremony because they were the cubs of Commander Vel Anna, who had become a hero to both species. They sang a traditional Kithari morning song, but they sang it in Korean words that Zeth had written himself. The melody was hauntingly beautiful, and there was not a dry eye in the crowd. After the ceremony, Elder Corlina approached Captain Day-Ho. "You have done something remarkable," she said. These cubs have not forgotten their heritage, but they have also gained something new. They have learned that strength can come from love as well as from fighting. But Elder Morgath was still unhappy with the changes he saw in the younger generation. These cubs are losing their edge, he complained. They are too gentle, too trusting. How will they survive if they must face danger? Kira overheard this conversation, and her response surprised everyone. Alpha Dad taught me that the strongest warriors protect others. She said in perfect Korean, Uncle Park taught me that smart warriors use their brains as well as their claws. Teacher Young taught me that brave warriors ask for help when they need it. I am still Kithari. But I am also something new. The colony was becoming famous throughout human space as a model of successful integration. Other refugee groups started arriving, asking for help with their own integration problems. The humans welcomed them all, and the Kithari cubs helped translate and explain how to adapt to life with their new neighbors. Dr. Park published research papers about interspecies child development that were read by scientists across the galaxy. His work showed that emotional bonds could form between any species that cared for children with patience and love. The key was understanding that different did not mean wrong. Lieutenant Nam Yujin started a youth program that taught both human and Kithari children about space, exploration, and diplomacy. The mixed groups of kids learned to work together on projects that required different skills and perspectives. They built model starships and planned imaginary diplomatic missions to distant worlds. The children are our future, Yujin told the Colony Council. They are growing up together as friends and family. The prejudices and misunderstandings that divided our species will not exist for them. They will build a galaxy where cooperation is normal. One evening, Dae-ho found Kira and Zeth in the garden, teaching human children how to climb trees and hunt insects. They were laughing and chattering in a mixture of Korean and Kithari that only they could understand. The human kids were trying to purr like Kithari, while the alien cubs attempted to whistle Korean songs. This is what Velana died for, he thought as he watched them play. Not just to save their lives, but to give them a chance to become something better than what came before that night as he tucked the cubs into bed. Zeth asked him a question that made him think, Alpha Dad, do you think our mama would be happy with who we are becoming? Dae-ho looked at the two children who had become his whole world. Kira was fierce and protective, but also gentle, and loving Zeth was wise and peaceful, but also brave and strong. They were perfectly Kithari and perfectly human at the same time. I think she would be very proud, he answered, and meant every word. You are exactly what she hoped you would become. Strong, enough to protect others, and loved enough to never be alone. The cubs snuggled deeper into their blankets, and Dae-ho began to sing the lullaby that had first brought them together. His voice mixed with their soft purring created a sound that was completely new and completely perfect. Outside their window, the colony slept peacefully under alien stars, human and Kithari families dreaming together of a future where differences were celebrated instead of feared. It was not the future anyone had planned, but it was beautiful in ways no one had imagined. The refugee fleet arrived at New Seoul 3 days after the battle. The human colony world was beautiful with green forests and blue oceans that reminded the Kithari survivors of their lost homeworld. But everything felt strange and different, and many of the alien refugees were scared and confused. Mayor Song Hai-jin met the ships at the spaceport with hundreds of human volunteers. They brought food and blankets and medical supplies. Human families opened their homes to complete strangers, offering beds and comfort to people they had never met before. The Kithari were amazed by this kindness because their own culture was much more focused on individual strength. Captain Dae-ho had the hardest job of all. He had to figure out what to do with Kira and Zeth, the twin cubs whose mother had died saving them. The two 4-year-old Kithari were staying in the medical center because no one knew how to take care of them properly. Dr. Park Jin-woo was studying everything he could find about Cathari biology and psychology, but most of the information was about adult warriors, not small children. The cubs had not eaten anything since arriving, and they would not talk to anyone. They just sat in the corner of their room holding each other and making soft crying sounds. Day-Ho visited them every morning, trying to keep the promise he had made to their mother. He brought toys and food and tried to play with them, but Kira would hiss and scratch at him whenever he got too close. Zeth would run and hide under the bed, refusing to come out even for meals. The other Cathari survivors were dealing with their own problems. They were trying to build new lives in a completely different culture. The adult Cathari did not know how to help the cubs, because in their society, orphaned children were supposed to prove themselves through combat trials. But Kira and Zeth were too young and too traumatized to do anything except cry communications. Officer Lee Subin was working late one night when she heard strange sounds coming from the medical center. She followed the noise and found the cubs in their room making the saddest crying sounds she had ever heard. It reminded her of human babies who were sick or lonely. She remembered something from her childhood and started playing a recording of human children singing lullabies. The effect was immediate. Kira and Zeth stopped crying and listened to the gentle voices. The songs were in Korean, so the cubs could not understand the words, but somehow the caring tone and soft melody made them feel better. Subin called Dr. Park right away and told him what had happened. The doctor rushed to the medical center and watched in amazement as the cubs responded to the human music. For the first time since their mother died, they seemed peaceful and calm. "This is incredible," Park said as he made notes on his tablet. Cathari cubs need constant vocal and physical reassurance to develop properly. Without their mothers purring and grooming, they are literally dying of loneliness. The other adult Cathari are too busy rebuilding their lives to provide this kind of care. But the human music seems to work, Subin observed. "Look at how they are breathing now. It is much more relaxed." Park nodded and started forming a theory. Human emotional expression might be similar enough to Cathari maternal behavior to help these cubs. The problem is that most Cathari adults have been trained to suppress their emotions. They cannot provide the kind of nurturing that cubs need. When Captain Day-Ho arrived the next morning, he found the cubs sitting quietly listening to Subin sing a Korean lullaby. They were not happy, but they were not crying either. For the first time, he felt like maybe he could actually keep his promise to Commander Villana. But the news of human involvement in raising the cubs caused problems in the Cathari community. Elder Morgath was an old warrior who believed strongly in traditional ways. He gathered other survivors and argued that letting humans raise Cathari cubs would make them weak and unfit for their own society. "These soft-hearted humans will ruin our young," he declared at a community meeting. "Cubs must learn to be strong and independent, human. Emotions will make them unable to survive in the real galaxy." But Elder Coralina disagreed. She was an elderly female who had lost her own cubs to the devourers, and she understood the pain of watching young ones suffer. "Look at them," she said, pointing to where Kira and Zeth sat with human caregivers. "They are eating again. They are not crying constantly. The humans are helping them heal." The debate split the refugee community. Some Cathari wanted to maintain their pure culture, while others were grateful for any help they could get. The cubs themselves were too young to understand the politics, but they could feel the tension around them. Dr. Park continued his research and made more discoveries. Cathari cubs were actually much more emotionally sensitive than adults, but their culture taught them to shut down these feelings very early. The trauma of losing their mother had left Kira and Zeth unable to complete this emotional shutdown process. Teacher Jung Mi Kyung volunteered to help develop special education programs that would blend human emotional learning with Cathari warrior training. She spent hours with the cubs, teaching them basic skills while also providing the emotional support they needed. Slowly, the cubs began to respond to human caregiving. Kira, who was naturally more aggressive, started following Daeho around the colony like a protective shadow. She learned that humans used hugs instead of grooming to show affection, and she began demanding hugs whenever she felt scared or lonely. Zeth was quieter and more thoughtful, but he became fascinated by human music and storytelling. He would sit for hours listening to Subin sing or watching Jung Mi-kyung read stories to human children. His favorite songs were the lullabies because they reminded him of safety and comfort. The real breakthrough came during a thunderstorm that hit New Seoul one night. The sound of thunder and lightning terrified both cubs because on their homeworld storms had meant that devourer. Attacks were coming. Kira and Zeth huddled together in their bed crying and calling for their dead mother, Day. Ho did not know what to do. He had never been a father before and he felt helpless watching the small aliens suffer. He tried talking to them, but they were too scared to listen. So he started humming a Korean lullaby that his own grandmother had sung to him when he was a child. The cubs stopped crying and listened to the unfamiliar but soothing sounds. When Daeho finished humming, Zeth made a small chirping noise, which Dr. Park later explained was the Cathari way of asking for more. So Daeho sang another lullaby and then another. By morning, both cubs were sleeping peacefully, curled up against the human captain. Word spread through the colony about the human who sang alien children to sleep. Some people thought it was the most beautiful thing they had ever heard, while others worried about the cultural implications. Elder Corlina visited Daeho the next day and thanked him for his kindness. "You have given these cubs something that we could not," she said. "Our way is to make children strong through hardship, but sometimes the strongest thing is to show that someone cares. The cubs are healthy and growing for the first time since their mother died." Dr. Park reported to the Colony Council, "Human emotional caregiving seems to be exactly what traumatized Cathari young need to recover," but Elder Morgath continued to object. "These cubs are becoming too dependent on human comfort," he argued. "What will happen when they must face the harsh reality of adult life? They will be unprepared, Captain." Daeho looked at Kira and Zeth playing with human children in the colony gardens. They were laughing and running and acting like normal kids for the first time since he had known them. Their mother died to protect them. He said quietly, "The least we can do is let them be children for a while longer." The evacuation was almost finished, but the devourers were getting angry. They had been expecting an easy meal of helpless civilians, but the human ships kept getting in their way. Now the metal machines were gathering for one massive final attack. That would destroy everything. Commander Velana stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the enemy ships form up into attack formation. She knew what was coming, and she knew what it meant. Someone had to stay behind to hold them off long enough for the last transports to escape. It was a suicide mission, but it was the only way to save her people. She looked at the tactical display showing the remaining ships. 30 civilian transports were still trying to reach the jump point where they could escape to hyperspace. Most of them carried cubs and elderly Cathari who could not fight. The transports were slow and helpless against the devourer weapons. Captain Daeho. "This is Commander Velana," she said into her communicator. "I am going to hold the devourers here while the last transports escape. You should take your ships and go now, while you still can." The human captain's voice came back immediately over the radio. "We are not leaving you to die alone. Commander, my tactical officer, Nam Yujin is already coordinating with your remaining ships for a final defensive line." Veliana felt something strange in her chest. It was an emotion she had never experienced before. A warm feeling that came from knowing someone cared enough to stay and fight beside her. The humans could escape easily with their fast ships, but they were choosing to stay and help. The Devourer attack began with a wave of missiles that filled space like angry metal wasps. The human ships moved in front of the Cathari vessels, absorbing hits that would have destroyed them. Daeho's ship, Dawn's Promise, took direct hits from 3 Devourer cannons, but kept fighting. Velana's flagship was hit by a massive energy beam that tore through the hull like paper. She felt the ship shake and heard the sound of breaking metal all around her. Emergency lights flashed red, and she could smell smoke in the air. Her engineering officer reported that life support was failing and fires were spreading through the lower decks. Through her communicator, she could hear voices from the evacuation ships. One voice made her heart stop. It was her twin cubs, Kira and Zeth, calling for her from the transport. They were on. "Mama, where are you?" 4-year-old Kira was crying. "Why can't you come with us, Mama?" "I'm scared," said little Zeth in his tiny voice. "Are the bad machines going to hurt you?" Velana closed her eyes and tried to stay strong for her children. She was the commander of a battle fleet and a proud Kithari warrior. But she was also a mother, and the thought of leaving her cubs alone in the universe was breaking her heart. In Kithari society, cubs without parents became outcasts. Other adults would not take care of them because they believed only the strongest should survive. Orphaned cubs usually died young or became criminals living on the edges of society. Velana could not bear the thought of her precious babies facing such a terrible fate. Captain Deho, she called over the radio as another explosion rocked her ship. "I need you to promise me something. My cubs are on Transport 17. If I do not survive this battle, will you make sure they are not abandoned?" Deho's voice was firm and certain. "I promise, Commander. Your cubs will be protected, but you do not understand our ways," Velana said as fire spread closer to her command center. "Orphaned cubs in our society have no future. They become nothing. They starve and no one cares. Then they will not be orphaned," the human captain replied. "I give you my word as a human and as a father. Your children will have a family." Velana felt tears running down her furry cheeks. She had never cried before in her entire life. Kithari warriors did not cry, but something about the certainty in the humans' voice made her believe that her cubs would be safe. She opened the communication channel to Transport 17. "Kira. Zeth, listen to Mama," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "You are going to be safe. The humans are good people. They will take care of you when Mama cannot be there anymore. But we want you to come with us." Kira sobbed. "I know, little one. But Mama has to stay here to keep the bad machines away from you. The human captain has promised to be your new family, and humans always keep their promises." "Mama!" "No," Zeth cried. "I don't want a new family, I want you." Velana's heart was breaking, but she had to be strong for them one last time. "Listen to me, my brave cubs. You are Kithari and you are strong, but it is okay to let the humans love you. They have big hearts and they will sing you to sleep when you are scared." Another massive explosion shook the ship, and Velana knew her time was running out. The Devourer ships were closing in and her weapons were failing. The human ships were still fighting, but they could not hold the line much longer. She looked at the tactical screen and saw 3 Devourer ships heading straight for the transport, carrying her cubs. Without thinking, she grabbed the manual controls and turned her dying ship toward the enemy. She would use her flagship as a weapon. One last time. Dr. Park Jinwoo's voice came over the radio. "Commander, we can try to rescue you. Our medical shuttle can reach your position, no." Dr. Velana replied as she armed every weapon her ship had left. "Take care of my cubs and teach them that their mother died protecting those she loved." She aimed her ship at the lead Devourer vessel and pushed the engines to maximum power. Her flagship screamed through space, trailing fire and smoke behind it. The Devourer machines tried to shoot her down, but she was moving too fast and she was too close. "Mama," Kira's voice called over the radio. "I love you both," Velana whispered, and then she crashed her ship into the Devourer fleet. Explosion was brilliant white light that could be seen from across the solar system. Velana's flagship and 3 Devourer ships were destroyed in a ball of fire that lit up the darkness. The remaining enemy machines were damaged and confused, giving the evacuation ships time to reach the jump point. On transport 17, 2 small Kithari cubs pressed their faces against the window and watched their mother become a star. The human crew members tried to comfort them, but Kira and Zeth just held each other and cried. Captain Day-Ho watched the explosion from his bridge and felt a weight settle on his shoulders. He had made a promise to a dying mother, and now he had to figure out how to keep it. He had never raised alien children before, and he did not know anything about Kithari culture, but he had given his word, and humans always kept their promises, even when they did not know how. The last transport ships jumped to hyperspace, carrying thousands of Kithari refugees to safety. Among them were 2 small cubs who no longer had a mother, but who had been promised a new family by a strange species that sang lullabies and believed that love was stronger than death. The battle was over, but the real challenge was just beginning. Captain Lee Day-Ho was drinking his morning coffee when the alarm started screaming through his ship. The red lights flashed and the crew ran to their stations. Everyone knew that sound meant trouble was coming, and it was coming fast. The bridge of the human exploration vessel Dawn's Promise filled with worried voices as the communications officer turned to face the captain. Her name was Lee Subin, and she had been working the night shift when the message came through Space Captain. "We are getting a distress signal," she said, and her voice was shaking. "It is coming from the Kithara system, and it sounds really bad." Day-Ho put down his coffee cup and walked to the big screen at the front of the bridge. He had been a space captain for 15 years, but he had never seen anything like what appeared on the screen. The planet Kithara was covered in fire and smoke. Giant metal ships that looked like angry insects were attacking everything they could find. "Put the message through," he ordered, and the bridge became very quiet. The screen changed and showed the face of an alien that looked like a mix between a human and a big cat. She had golden fur and bright green eyes that burned with anger and desperation. Her name was Commander Velana, and she belonged to a species called the Kithari human vessel, she said, and her voice was proud, even though her ship was shaking from enemy attacks. "We are Commander Velana of the Kithari Third Fleet. We do not usually ask for help from anyone, but our situation is very bad." Day-Ho knew about the Kithari. They were famous throughout the galaxy as the best fighters anyone had ever seen. They were tall and strong and fast, and they never backed down from a fight. They also thought humans were weak because humans cared too much about feelings and helping others. The Kithari called humans soft hearts, and they did not mean it as a compliment. "What is attacking you, Commander?" he asked. Even though he could see the metal ships on his screen, "They are called the Devourers," Velana replied, and her ship shook again from another attack. "They are ancient machines that eat entire planets for metal and fuel. They have been sleeping for thousands of years, but something woke them up. Now they are moving toward the center of the galaxy and destroying everything in their path." The screen showed more of the battle, and Day-Ho felt sick to his stomach. The Devourer ships were huge and covered in spinning blades and laser cannons. They moved like a swarm of metal wasps. And everywhere they went, they left nothing but broken pieces behind. "We have been fighting for 3 days," Velana continued, "but we cannot stop them. Our warriors are brave, but these machines do not feel fear or pain or anything at all. They just keep coming and coming. Our planet is lost, but we still have civilian ships trying to escape. Most of them carry cubs and elderly who cannot fight." Dr. Park Jin-woo stepped forward from his position at the medical station. He was the ship's doctor, and he was also Day-Ho's best friend captain. "If there are children in danger, we have to help them." Day-Ho nodded, but he was thinking about the problems they would face. His small fleet had only 5 ships, and they were exploration vessels, not warships. The Devourers looked like they could crush his entire fleet without even slowing down. Commander Velana, he said how many civilian ships are trying to escape. 47, she answered, but only 31 are still flying. The Devourers are hunting them like prey. They seem to enjoy destroying ships that cannot fight back. That made Deho angry. The idea of giant machines hunting helpless families made his human heart burn with rage. He looked around his bridge and saw the same anger on every face. His crew was ready to fight even if they might die doing it. Engineer. Kim So-min spoke up from her station. Captain, our shields are stronger than most ships in the galaxy. We might not be able to destroy those machines, but we could protect the civilian ships while they escape. Lieutenant Choi Min-ho added his voice from the weapon station. And our missile systems are very accurate. We could slow the Devourers down long enough for the evacuation to finish. Dae-ho felt proud of his crew. They were not the strongest fighters in the galaxy, but they had something the machines did not have. They had hearts that cared about protecting innocent people, especially children. Commander Velana, he said, "We are coming to help you." The Cathari commander looked surprised. "Why would you risk your lives for us? We have never been friends with your species. We have always said that humans are too weak to be real warriors, because those children need help." Dae-ho replied, "And that is what humans do. We help when help is needed." Velana stared at him for a long moment. Her green eyes seemed to be looking right into his soul. Finally, she spoke again. "I do not understand your kind human, but I am grateful. Come quickly, the Devourers will not wait." The next few hours were the longest of Dae-ho's life. His 5 ships raced through space toward the Cathara system. Behind him came every human vessel that could reach them in time. Word had spread through the human colonies about children in danger, and ship after ship volunteered to help. When they arrived at Cathara, the battle was even worse than the pictures had shown. The planet itself was on fire, and pieces of destroyed ships floated everywhere like metal snow. The Devourer fleet was massive, with hundreds of the insect-like machines swarming around the remaining Cathari vessels. Dawn's Promise took position between a group of civilian transports and the nearest Devourer ships. Dae-ho ordered his shields to full power and told his weapons officer to target the enemy engines. The Devourers turned toward the human ships, and Dae-ho got his first close look at them. They were even more terrifying up close. Each machine was as big as a city and covered, with thousands of weapons that gleamed like metal teeth. Their hulls were made from the melted remains of planets they had eaten. The first Devourer attack hit Dawn's Promise like a hammer blow. The ship shook and sparks flew from control panels, but the shields held Dae-ho smiled grimly. Their shields were indeed stronger than anyone expected around him. The battle raged as human ships used their advanced technology to protect fleeing Cathari civilians. Dr. Park monitored the medical frequencies and reported that several Cathari ships were requesting help with wounded warriors. Send medical teams to assist, Dae-ho ordered, even though it meant putting his people in danger. The strangest thing happened during the fight. Engineer Kim So-min noticed that the human crews were predicting Devourer attack patterns better than the Cathari battle computers. The reason was simple. Humans felt fear and hope and anger, and these emotions somehow helped them understand what the enemy might do next. A Cathari transport full of cubs was about to be destroyed when Lieutenant Choi Min-ho flew his fighter directly into the path of a Devourer attack. His ship was damaged, but the transport escaped safely. Commander Velana watched this happen from her command ship, and for the first time in her life she began to understand something important about humans. Their emotions were not weakness, they were a different kind of strength. A strength that came from caring about others more than yourself. As the evacuation continued, more and more Cathari civilians reached safety. The human ships took damage, but they kept fighting, and they kept protecting. The soft-hearted humans were proving that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is refuse to let innocent people die. 2 years had passed since the Cubs first came to New Sol, and the colony had transformed into something completely new. Human and Kithari families lived side by side, sharing meals and celebrations and daily life. The unusual family arrangements had become the heart of a larger transformation that spread throughout the community. Kira was now 6 years old and had grown into a fierce protector of her mixed family. She was taller and stronger than human children her age, but she had learned to control her strength so she would not accidentally hurt her friends. She called Captain Deho Alpha Dad and insisted on teaching human cubs proper stalking techniques, which mostly involved hiding behind furniture and pouncing on unsuspecting adults. Zeth had become the colony's unofficial diplomat, helping to resolve conflicts between different species with his gentle wisdom. He could speak 4 languages fluently, and he had a gift for understanding what people really meant when they were too proud or scared to say it directly. His favorite activity was composing songs that blended human melodies with Kithari harmonics. The real test of their new society came when long-range sensors detected a ship approaching the New Sol system. It was a Kithari rescue vessel sent to collect survivors and take them to a new homeworld that had been prepared for refugees. The ship carried Elder Velcor, a respected leader who had come to evaluate the condition of his people captain. Song Jae-min commanded the rescue vessel, and he was shocked by what he found when he arrived. The Kithari refugees were healthy and prosperous, but many of them had adopted human customs and were raising their cubs alongside alien families. Some cubs like Kira and Zeth seemed more human than Kithari in their behavior. "This is not what I expected," Velcor told the colony council. "We came to rescue our people from a difficult situation, but they appear to have created something entirely new." Here, Mayor Song Hae-jin welcomed the visitors and arranged tours of the colony so they could see how the integration was working. The rescue team watched human and Kithari children playing together in schools that taught both species' histories. They observed mixed families celebrating holidays that combined traditions from both cultures. Elder Morgath saw the arrival of the rescue ship as his chance to restore proper Kithari culture. He gathered the survivors and argued that they should return to their own people and rebuild their society. The traditional way. "We have been weakened by too much contact with human emotions," he declared at a community meeting. "Our cubs are losing their warrior instincts and becoming dependent on alien comfort. This is not the Kithari way," but Elder Corlina disagreed strongly. "Look at our cubs," she said, pointing to where Kira was helping a human child who had fallen and scraped his knee. "They are still strong and brave, but they have also learned compassion and cooperation. These are not weaknesses. They are new kinds of strength." The debate divided the refugee community. Some Kithari wanted to leave and rebuild their pure culture on the new homeworld. Others wanted to stay and continue building their integrated society. The decision was made more difficult because families would have to be separated and children would have to choose between their birth culture and their adopted homes. Captain Deho knew that he had to respect whatever choice Kira and Zeth made, even if it broke his heart. He had promised their mother that he would protect them, and sometimes protection meant letting them go. The cubs were old enough to understand what was happening, and they knew that this decision would affect their entire future. Elder Velcor spent several days observing the integrated community and interviewing both human and Kithari families. He was particularly interested in the educational programs that teacher Youngmi Kyung had developed, and the research that Dr. Park had published about interspecies child development. "These cubs are remarkable," he admitted privately to Captain Deho. "They have maintained their Kithari strength and intelligence, but they have also gained human emotional intelligence and social cooperation. I have never seen anything like it." The rescue ship Captain Song Jae-min was also impressed by what he saw. The humans had not tried to make the Kithari cubs into humans. Instead, they had helped them become better versions of themselves. The cubs were confident and happy and clearly loved their adopted families. When the time came for the final decision, the entire colony gathered in the community center. Elder Velcor announced that any Kithari who wanted to come to the new homeworld would be welcome. He also said that those who chose to stay would still be considered part of the Kithari people. Families stood up one by one to announce their choices. Some decided to leave because they missed their old way of life. Others chose to stay because they had built new lives that they did not want to abandon. The room was full of tears and hugs as friends prepared to say goodbye. Then it was time for Kira and Zeth to choose. Captain Day-Ho knelt down, so he was at their eye level and spoke to them in the gentle voice he had used to sing them to sleep. "You can choose whatever feels right in your hearts," he said. "I will always love you no matter what you decide." The cubs looked at each other and seemed to have a silent conversation. Then Kira stood up straight and spoke in perfect Korean. "Alpha Dad is my father." Now she announced clearly, "Earth is my homeworld. I want to stay and protect both human and Kithari children." Zeth stepped forward and added his own words. "My mother died protecting cubs, and now I want to protect children too. I can do that best here where different species learn to be family. Their decision inspired other mixed families to stay together." About half the Kithari survivors chose to remain on New Sol, creating the galaxy's first truly integrated human Kithari society. The other half left with respect and understanding, carrying stories of human compassion back to their new homeworld. Elder Velcor shook hands with Captain Day-Ho before departing. "You have done something that will be remembered for generations," he said. "These cubs and this colony prove that strength comes in many forms. The galaxy needs more places like this." Dr. Park continued his research and began receiving requests from other worlds dealing with refugee integration problems. His methods were being adapted to help dozens of different species learn to live together. The New Sol model became famous throughout civilized space teacher. Young Mi-kyung expanded her educational programs to include children from 3 more species that had requested help with integration. Her schools became training centers where educators from across the galaxy came to learn new teaching methods. The colony itself continued to grow and prosper. Trade relationships developed with both human and Kithari worlds, and the unique perspective of the integrated community made them valuable mediators for interspecies disputes. The children who had grown up together became natural ambassadors between different cultures. Kira developed into a gifted cultural liaison officer, helping new refugee species integrate into galactic society. Her combination of Kithari strength and human emotional intelligence made her incredibly effective at resolving conflicts and building trust between different groups. Zeth became known throughout the sector as a composer and peacemaker. His music was played on worlds across the galaxy, and his lullabies were sung to children of many different species. His gentle wisdom and gift for understanding emotions made him a sought-after counselor for families dealing with cross-species. Adoption. Captain Day-Ho retired from military service to become the colony's Director of Interspecies Relations. He spent his days helping new arrivals adapt to integrated life, and his evenings singing lullabies to a growing collection of adopted children from various species. 5 years after the evacuation from Kithara, the colony received a message that would test everything they had built. Long-range sensors had detected another devourer fleet heading toward a distant world. The inhabitants were a reptilian species called the Skarn, who had never allied with anyone, and were known for their suspicion of outsiders. The Galactic Council debated whether to risk valuable ships and lives for a species that had always refused to cooperate with other worlds. Some argued that the Skarn had made their choice and should face the consequences alone. Others believed that no species deserved to face the Devourers without help. Kira and Zeth volunteered to lead a rescue mission, commanding a mixed fleet of human and Kithari volunteers. Their reputation as Successful integrators had spread throughout the galaxy, and many people believed they could convince the Skarn to accept help. We learned from the best they told their alpha dad as they prepared to leave. No one should face the darkness alone, and no child should grow up without family. As their ships departed New Sol, the entire colony came out to watch and wave goodbye. The mixed fleet represented everything the colony had achieved: human compassion, Kithari courage, and the belief that differences could be strengths instead of weaknesses. The rescue mission would be their greatest test, but they carried with them the most powerful weapon in the galaxy: the knowledge that love could bridge any gap between species and that families could be built from choice as well as blood. The rescue fleet commanded by Kira and Zeth reached the Skarn homeworld just as the Devourer machines began their attack. The reptilian people were fierce fighters, but they were also completely unprepared for an enemy that felt no fear or pain. The ancient machines swept through space like metal locusts, destroying everything in their path. The Skarn leadership initially refused help from the mixed human Kithari fleet. They had survived for thousands of years without allies, and they were not about to trust aliens. Now, their pride and suspicion ran so deep that they would rather face extinction than accept assistance from outsiders. Commander Kira, now 21 years old, and seasoned by years of diplomatic work, tried every approach. She knew the Skarn would not listen to logical arguments about cooperation or emotional appeals about protecting innocent lives. They saw any offer of help as an insult to their strength and independence. Commander Zeth took a different approach. He began broadcasting on all Skarn communication frequencies, but instead of words, he sent music. His voice carried a gentle lullaby sung in the Skarn language that he had learned specifically for this mission. The melody was soft and caring and completely unlike anything the warlike reptiles had ever heard. The effect was immediate. Skarn mothers who were trying to evacuate their young stopped to listen to the strange alien song that somehow expressed everything they were feeling: fear for their children, hope for survival, and desperate love that transcended species. The song reached something deep in their hearts that logic and pride could not touch. "Why does the alien sing to us?" asked General Sith Ak, the commander of the Skarn Defense Forces. "Because no child should face the darkness alone," Zeth replied in perfect Skarn. "My mother died fighting these same machines, and a human sang me to sleep when I was afraid. Now I sing to your children so they know someone cares." The breakthrough came when a group of Devourer machines broke through the Skarn defense line and headed straight for a civilian evacuation ship carrying hundreds of young Skarn. Without hesitation, Kira led her fighters in a desperate attack that saved the transport, but cost several of her own ships. She did not have to do that, General Sithak said to his advisors as he watched human and Kithari pilots die to save Skarn children. Those are not her people, yet she fights for them as if they were her own family. The general finally agreed to coordinate with the rescue fleet, and the combined forces began a fighting withdrawal toward the edge of the system. The Skarn were amazed by the tactical abilities of the integrated crews. Human emotional intelligence, combined with Kithari warrior instincts and Skarn defensive strategies, created a fighting force more effective than any single species could achieve. During the battle, Dr. Park, now serving as chief medical officer for the rescue fleet, worked alongside Skarn healers to treat wounded from all three species. The reptilian doctors were shocked to see humans and Kithari risking their lives to save injured Skarn soldiers. "Your people are very strange," one Skarn healer told Park. "Why do you care so much about strangers?" "Because we learned that families can be chosen as well as born," Park replied as he worked on a badly injured Skarn pilot. "These are our family now because we chose to make them family." The evacuation was successful, with most of the Skarn civilian population escaping to safety. The military losses were heavy, but the species survived, and they had learned something important about the value of cooperation and trust in gratitude. the Skarn offered to share their advanced defensive technologies with the rescue fleet. General Sithik personally thanked Kira and Szeth for their courage and compassion. "You have shown us that strength comes in many forms." He said, "I do not understand your ways, but I respect them. Our young will grow up knowing that aliens sang them to sleep when they were afraid." The rescue mission became a turning point for galactic civilization. News of the successful integration spread to dozens of worlds, and other species began to reconsider their policies of isolation. The idea that different species could work together as family rather than just allies was revolutionary. Captain Deho, now in his 60s, received regular reports about the growing movement toward interspecies cooperation colonies. Modeled after New Sol were being established throughout human space, and other species were beginning their own integration experiments.